Okay. Hi, guys, and welcome to the Red Tent, our very second one ever. So I am super happy for our brave ladies who have come today. And in the spirit of a Red Tent, we talk about the things that we need to talk about. And this is a Red Tent is a safe container. It's a place where we can all talk and exchange ideas and wisdom and knowledge. And it is that judgment-free, no taboo hashtag taboo free zone, and really be able to witness each other, talk to each other, have those moments with each other. And so since we're a small group and we had a question that I'd love to answer, I think we'll just dive in. And the question was, how do you chart if you maybe don't have a menstrual flow, or you had a hysterectomy, or maybe even going into perimenopause or menopause and that flow is just getting interrupted, right? I think that's a great question. And I think that one of the main tenets of charting is that you just write down the information that you have, whether it's day to day, week to week, month to month, whatever it is, you're writing down literally that day. So if you have had a like a partial hysterectomy in this case, and you just don't know what the heck is going on, you just write down exactly what's happening. And over time, you have all of these charts, so you could see like the last 3 months, and maybe you can start to see some patterns that come out. For example, you might find that your moon, the phase of the moon and your energy are much more closely tied than your energy with anything else, because that's the driving energy factor for you. I find that's true for me, and I have a regular menstrual cycle, and I still find that if I switch from, say, bleeding on the new moon to bleeding on the full moon, my energy goes with the moon more than I think even me. But then you do see things like, you can still chart your cervical fluid no matter where you are in your life or in your cycles, and you can see how that affects you. If you have a partial hysterectomy, or if you only have one working ovary for whatever reason, there's lots of different reasons for those kinds of things to happen. You might still even ovulate, but maybe just every other month. So being able to see your cervical fluid and your temperature, which would confirm those things or confirm that they're not happening, you can see that through the charting, through the cervical fluids. So even men should chart, really. I mean, how much radder would guys be if they knew what the heck was going on with themselves too? Really. But I'm seeing if I have in my chart, if I can show you, I have, so I had, at the beginning of the year, I had my period during the full moon at the very beginning of the year. Is this January? Yeah, this is January. I had my period at the full moon at the very beginning of the year. And then, so I had this, the dark blue is my color for lower energy. And then the dark blue here means introverted. I also broke up with my boyfriend at the very beginning of the year. So there's a lot of light blue, which means sad for me. But so it was the full moon. The full moon was like the day before. And I got my period the next day. And I had this really low energy, even though it was a full moon that went with my period. But then shortly after that, I got, the next month. Oh, right. So then after that, I went into my ovulation phase, which was during the new moon, but the orange is like high energy for me. So for this one, I was really tied into where my hormones were, and I was really feeling it. But then it flips, and there comes to be a time where I start my bleed on the full moon, and I started my bleed on the full moon, and I colored it blue and orange because I was like, I had a lot of energy at the beginning of the day, but I faded quick. And I was like, that must have been the full moon that like gave me that zing in my step. But then my period hit me, and I just was like done, even though it was a full moon. So I had like this really great energy, and then I was just like down the count. So I have found that sometimes the moon, if it is in sync with me, it's really on point. But if it's not in sync with me, it's like, it could kind of go either way, energy wise. So no, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter if you have a regular cycle or not. You still get all that cool data, and you start to learn what's going on for that. Does that help?
Yeah. The more I think about it, the more I realize, wow, there's a lot I don't even know about myself. Like, I still have my ovaries, so I guess I still ovulate. I don't even really know. And if I do, where does it go? I mean, and does me ovulating affect, me the same as if, I hadn't have had the hysterectomy? I mean, what all does that change,
Yeah. And there's really only one way to know that.
Tardy.
Nailed it. It's true though. I mean, it's like having an IUD. They're like, well, you might ovulate, you might not. We don't really know. And I mean, that's the freaking doctors. Like, they don't know. They don't know what happens. We don't really study women. So they don't really know what happens. And the only way to know for yourself is to find out. Now, the ovaries are what makes some of your hormones, some of your reproductive hormones. So your pineal gland makes some of them, tells your body to make some of them. So, I mean, as long as those systems are intact, one could hypothesize that, yeah, you're still getting the luteinizing hormone. You're still making the follicular stimulating hormone. Good question, though. Where does it go?
I've heard you use that word before, follicular, or I'm not exactly sure what you're saying. I don't know what that is.
So in the 4 phases of our cycle, we have the follicular phase, which is probably where you've heard me say it the most. The follicular phase, what happens is your pineal gland tells you to start making FSH is what they call it, but it's follicular stimulating hormone. So your ovaries have your eggs in them, and each egg is in a follicle. So if these are your follicles, there's an egg in each of them, and the follicular stimulating hormone, the FSH, stimulates that follicle to ripen an egg. And it will ripen that egg, and then you are triggered to release it. And then that egg releases and goes through the fallopian tube. So they call it the follicular phase because it's your follicle ripening an egg. It's like spring. It's like a little shoot is growing, and the bud is on the end, and the bud blooms, and it releases the egg. And it's the springtime of your cycle. So if you're looking at it from a Eastern philosophy or Chinese medicine perspective, we consider that a springtime phase of your cycle. And a lot of the foods that actually support your hormones during those times are springy foods like leaf lettuce and arugula, dandelion greens, really like good detoxifying foods, and lemon, citrus, grapefruit, like really just cleansing, clearing, growth, sprouts, shoots, springtime food. So it's funny how it all freaking just perfectly works together. And those are the things that really help stimulate those hormones. And then those hormones trigger, and everything triggers everything. So it's like those hormones trigger the next set of hormones that trigger the next set of hormones. So yeah, it's the follicle. And that's the phase that comes right after menstruation. So after you menstruate and you're done and you start to feel that energy bloom again, that's the estrogen rising, and the FSH starts to rise, and then the luteinizing hormone, they all peak right before you ovulate. So you feel that nice growth of hormone, testosterone even. Yeah.
You said four phases. I remember when my daughter was she was in Girl Scouts for just a little bit, and I remember one of the meetings a lady talked to them about like the 4 different weeks in your cycle, and she went through each one of them and said, oh, this week you're going to feel like bold and out there, and in another week you're going to feel all mousy and like leave me alone. And anyway, I've searched the internet trying to find that again because I couldn't remember what all it was, but it sounded like it could be really useful. And I haven't been able to find it.
I'll show you. I made a graphic a few years ago that I am still to this day in love with. Let me see here. I just did a talk that I use that graphic in. Let me find the slides. That's probably the easiest way. This guy. Yeah. Okay. Let me go to full screen here. And this is something that I email out when people join my email list or the summit. When you join the summit list, I send out this graphic as a thank you. And I love seeing pictures of it printed out and posted on fridges, just throwing that out there. I screenshot them and save them. They make me feel good when I'm having bad days. I look at them. And then sometimes I post them on my page. But this is the month in menstruation. And so it's not exactly a week in each phase. For instance, your ovulatory phase. I don't know. Can you see my cursor?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So the ovulatory phase down here is 3 to 4 days. It's not a long phase. Okay. Your luteal phase is 7 to 14. So they're not exact weeks, but it is for the sake of, and even like just working with younger girls, sometimes easier to just say it's 4 weeks. But that cycle goes around. So your menstrual phase is usually 5 days. Your follicular phase is usually 7. Your ovulatory is usually 3 to 4. And then your luteal phase is literally everything else. Generally.
Depending how long you're...
Right, exactly. So if you're in a perfect 28-day cycle, yes. But if you're not, then that's not going to work out quite that way. But, having your menstrual phase be somewhere around 5 days, 3 and 7 are also perfectly acceptable numbers. You're not really looking at the length of time unless you're getting outside of that 3 to 7 window, then there might be problems. But you're more looking at your blood and the consistency of your blood. And that's really what's telling you how healthy you are, the pain, the symptoms that you have around there. But your menstrual phase is your winter phase. It's that really yin time. It's that internal focus, low energy. And that follicular phase, as we were talking about earlier, is that spring phase, and that's the waxing phase of the moon. So it's like as the moon is growing and that energy is starting to grow, and you start to feel like being more interactive with other people. And that ovulation phase is where they were talking about like really feeling out there and bold. That's totally ovulation for sure. Because you're at your peak fertility, and you could sell sand to a camel. It's crazy. It's great though. I mean, if you're using it to your advantage and you're really like using your follicular and your ovulation phase, because one really feeds into the other. If you're using that to your advantage, you can do some really good stuff. But that's the summer. That's that very surged, high, young energy. So you're the complete opposite of yin now. You're really in that young energy, the sun energy. And then you go into that luteal phase, which has 2 hormonal phases in it. So that's why it's so long. It's also why in Chinese medicine, we consider it having both fall energy. They'll call it late summer and fall, earth and metal. They give it both of these seasons and both of these elements because it does have there's a little hormonal rise and ebb in it, and it can be 2 weeks long. So we find that happens a lot, but that's when you start to kind of, you'll see a lot of times, like after ovulation, women will go into like whew, man, I feel like I just knocked out a bunch. I need to rest. And then they get kind of a second wind. And then they're like, okay, I'm about to get my period. I need to do nothing but like cook and eat and sleep. And that's totally normal. It's actually, our hormones set us up to want to do that for a very good reason. But that's why it's like that late summer into fall feeling. And I like the elements of that time because that earth and that metal element is really grounding and strengthening. And you need a lot of iron because you're about to bleed. And you need a lot of like really grounding, earthing food because you're about to bleed. And that's a nourishment and nutrition. So it's a really kind of a cool way of looking at it. And I love that Chinese medicine knew this. Eastern philosophy knew all of this thousands and thousands of years ago, and they were totally spot on. And all science has done is confirm what they already knew, which I think is just kind of hilarious, but I love it. But yeah, so, and then the foods that are listed on here are also really supportive of your hormones in those phases. So depending on where you are in those phases, it can be really nice to have those, and energetically too. Because energetically, some of these are really grounding or uplifting, or just kind of depending on where you're going, how you're feeling. They can be really helpful to look at. I had a client in Your Business, Your Flow who put this on her refrigerator, and whenever she would get stuck as to like what to make for a meal, she would look at it and she'd just pick something on there. And she was like, and I love her. She's got this thick Southern accent. She'd be like, Stasha, I have got to tell you that I went and I tried this, and I was like, I don't know if this is what I really want to eat, but I ate it anyway. And I had like 3 bites, and my body was like, yes, this is exactly what we needed. And it just felt so good. I was like, funny enough, that's exactly what happened to me too. I didn't really think that it would be quite as like, it felt like coming home in a way. I didn't realize how amazing it was going to feel when I started doing it, but then I did, and I was like, oh my God, this is kind of cool. But yeah, does that help?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, if I could just figure out, what my cycle is and where I am in it, then I can kind of plan, ahead.
Yeah, that's this thing. Actually, that's one of the things about the charting book that I really like, is that we make that that monthly. I have to do mine for this month. This summit has just taken up all of my brain space, but putting in like my estimated times, and like, this is where I realized I didn't ovulate, and that wasn't going to work out because I didn't ovulate for those 3 days. And so I got my period early that month. But I put those in and sort of went, this is where I'm going to be approximately in my phases of my cycle. And then I put like the big events in there that I knew I needed to get done. And then when I did my week to week, and like the stuff that has to get done every week, I just sort of front loaded it for myself so that I knew I would get it done. But that's this. Like, this was all of the things that needed to be done. And then I just kind of took them and filled them into the calendar. And we put the moon phases in the calendar specifically to make this process easier. So you can look at where you are in your cycle and, where you guess you will be in your cycle, but you can also look at the moon phases and kind of go, okay, well, that's the full moon. So I know that I'll have a little bit of energy. Like, even if I do get my bleed and it's a full moon, I'll still have a little bit of energy. So maybe I'll schedule 1 or 2 things for that time. Because it's crazy how much it can make a difference. Yeah. And that's when you get better at it. The more you do it, the more you practice it, the better you get at it. Yeah. Linda, you got anything to chime in there?
this was really helpful. I really appreciate it because that was kind of that big question I had. Like, okay, so these are everybody with periods, da, da, da. So, and I kept thinking, that can't be, you know, and so I hadn't asked you about it. So thank you.
Yeah,
Appreciate it.
totally. I mean, there's, first of all, getting through perimenopause and into menopause is an adventure. And I feel like charting can be such a helpful part of that, just because
bet.
you see what's going on in your body so much clearer. And it's a little
Yeah.
less like, I feel like this happened last month, but I'm not sure. And especially as that transition is happening and then gets further and further apart,
Mhm.
you're like, when was my last period? Oh, I have no idea.
Yeah, and I had no idea that I was sensitive to salicylates and that I bleed from them. So I'll get a bloody nose if I get into too many foods with salicylates. So when I was having those really heavy bleeds and the clots and bright red blood and stuff, I would just use Trameal cream to just kind of thicken my blood and slow things down, and that helped a lot. But I had no idea that like foods were connected,
Yeah.
you know, to all of this and could have, you know, made things a little more manageable. Otherwise, I didn't have any other issues. I had horrible periods, like you, not to that extreme of you, but so much pain that like couldn't really breathe. And if I did take a breath, I remember taking a test and, you know, just really going into some serious cramping. And then after the test, I was walking through the park, and I leaned up against a tree. And then I saw people from my house, my campus, you know, I lived just off campus, but saw them coming towards me and took a sigh of relief kind of breath. And I didn't have enough energy to take a breath and stand. And I like literally slid down the tree.
Yeah.
Then they were trying to like basically drag me home. I could hardly move my legs. And of course, some guy, I'm leaning over because I'm dying from the cramps, and some guy thinks I'm just drunk as a skunk, you know,
Right.
university girl.
Yeah.
He gave me a ride home. Oh, that was the worst.
Yep. I know what that feels like.
Yep. So then they tried the birth control.
Mm.
And then finally my family doctor figured out it was thyroid. So then I got on a little bit of that for
Oh,
a
that's
while.
nice.
I just wanted off. So I got off and I did my own thing. And then I was fine.
I did the same thing. While my menstrual cycle was screaming at me that there was something going on in my body, I was a teenager. It was the 90s. No one knew any of this stuff.
Right.
And my thyroid eventually gave out. And I was sleeping 20 hours a day. And they were like, no, it can't be your thyroid. You're too young for that. You must be pregnant. And I was like, you've had me on birth control since I was like 5 years before you even started having sex. Are you kidding me? Like, there's no way. I barely even have a period, even though I'm in murderous rage and horrific pain. But I still, like, there's no way that I'm pregnant. She's like, no, you're pregnant. I had to fight for a thyroid test.
Oh, that's creepy.
Yeah. The ranting and the raving I could do about the medical system. But
Yeah.
I also did the same thing. I was like, well, I don't want to be on this for the rest of my life. Also, I'm going to be a dancer, so I'm not going to be able to afford health insurance. So
that was my path too.
yeah, I was like, once I'm 18 and I can't be on my parents' health insurance anymore, I'm going to be screwed. So
Yeah, major.
I better figure this out.
Except that in this marriage, I got married and finally did the legal beagle. We did like a spiritual marriage first, and then I did the legal beagle for insurance, which I've yet to use, which is even funnier to me. We think we need all this insurance. I've yet to tap it. So
I know. To be honest, I thank you, Obama. I'm on Obamacare, and I haven't used it. I used it once, actually. I did go to the emergency room because when I still had my restaurant, I cut my thumb off. Well, like not my thumb off, but I cut through the nail, like half of the nail.
Ooh, that's nasty, scary
my thumb
stuff.
off, and it was just sort of like flapping in the wind. And I was like, I texted my boyfriend at the time, and I was like, I sliced off a chunk of my thumb. I don't think I need to go to the emergency room, but I'm also really lightheaded, and
slightly.
And tell me what you think. And he was like, oh, you need to go to the
my God. Let's talk shock while we're at it. And was it vegetables you were cutting? Because one of my friends did that with vegetables and ended up
I was using a
major
mandolin, like a really sharp mandolin. and I was making beet carpaccio, so slicing beets on a mandolin, and I just went up my thumb, and they had to put stitches through my thumbnail. And can I tell you what? That is a weird experience.
Yeah, that would be. I think hers was tomatoes, and tomatoes, they're notorious for food poisoning and shit. So yeah, she became septic. How do you say that? Septic?
Yeah, septic.
Yes, and she had major surgery, or they went in and cleaned her up like royale. Nasty business.
Yeah, see, it's the only time I've ever gone to the emergency room, ever had. I'm sure I've needed stitches before in my life. Like, I know for a fact I've needed stitches before. Whatever, I'm fine. But that was like, I'm glad I went that time. I'm going to use insurance.
So with all the cramping and stuff, you probably have a pretty high pain tolerance for normal shit.
Yeah, I know. Well, that was what
I do.
They were like, oh, well, yeah. I wasn't in pain. I was just really dizzy. And then because I was like so far down on their emergency room list, I sat there for so long that I actually was starting to pass out. Just I had lost a lot of blood. But it wasn't like gushing, so no one really was paying attention to me.
Oh, that's creepy.
Yeah. Medical care in the United States.
Mm-hmm. Indeed.
Yeah. But yeah, that's one of the things that I do like about charting is that you can look at foods and you can actually like look at one individual thing and see how it affects you and how it affects your energy and your cycle and everything.
So when your thyroid's off, did I just interrupt you? Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Oh, okay. When your thyroid's off, you can get like really cold. And so what part of this stage do you eat the warmer foods? I didn't super pay attention to the foods.
Oh, well, you can eat them whenever. So if you're feeling cold or you need, honestly, the things that stimulate thyroid are your seaweeds. So, and those you should just be having, like women in general should be having every day. Iodine is really important for breast health. It clears out the lymphatic system and the milk ducts in the breast tissue, which is where most breast cancers form. Is in the lymph nodes, right? We know that a lot of breast cancer starts with a lymphectomy. So it starts in the lymph nodes and in the milk ducts. So iodine clears them out. So one of the best things you can do for just general breast health is have seaweed daily. And it's hard to do if you don't have some cheater things. And I just threw away my bottle of seaweed.
Hate the taste of seaweed.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I have this really great cheating, and I threw it away. There's a company called Maine Coast, and they make these seasoning shakers. It looks like a salt and pepper shaker, like those old white and black paper salt and pepper shakers, They're that same exact thing, except that they're not salt and pepper. Well, they are, but there's different kinds. So there's like dulse seaweed with cayenne or garlic or 3 seasoned flakes with sea salt. So there's all different kinds of seasoning blends that they make that has the seaweed into it. And you can kind of just shake it. I shake it on top of salads. I use the garlic when I make my the fermented buckwheat bread. I use the garlic in it. When I make my bone broth, I put a strip of kombu into the bone broth and use that as just a way of getting it in. And then ultimately you can always take a supplement, but be really careful with the supplements because iodine, you don't do the drops unless you have a really low functioning thyroid. Don't use the drops, but you can do things like a kelp tablet every now and again. And the symptoms of too much iodine are very similar to detox symptoms. So if you feel like you're getting detox symptoms, you've had too much. Because it is a really powerful detoxifier for the lymphatic system, for the body. But you can overdo iodine, which is why I like to do it via diet as much as possible. And I throw it into stuff. I don't tell anybody that I'm doing it to them. I just feed people food, and it's in like everything. So I just use these little salt. They're not salt shakers, but salt shakers. I just use these shakers, and I just like throw it in there. And rare is it no, no one's ever noticed. I can't even say rare. No one's ever noticed. I put it in pasta sauce, like when I'm making marinara, just a few sprinkles. It doesn't take a lot. It's not like you have to throw in like heaps of it or have a seaweed salad. Just throw some sprinkles in there. And if you're throwing a few sprinkles and a lot of stuff, you're not tasting it and you're getting it. You're getting a nice steady dose even, which is even better than doing like one seaweed salad a week or something, you know?
I use isopropyl iodine, and it really clears my head. And my husband uses it too.
Yeah. I mean, I do the drops because I had a really low functioning thyroid, but even I can tell when I've had too much. I will be like, oh, too much iodine. I start to get all of like the breakouts, the detoxification breakout.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
The cleanse breakout. I start to get the breakout, and then I start to get dizzy, a little nauseous. I'm like, okay, nothing I can do but just stop taking this and drink a lot of water.
I think it's like 1 or 2 drops to a whole, something ounce, something bottle it's like watered down. But, I can tell my thyroid what's happening with my bowels, because you can get like all the way down to diarrhea, all the way up to constipation. And when your thyroid's working correctly, there's like the over and the under, which is the worst one, we fluctuate like that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I didn't realize that I could, gauge my iodine via my bowel movements. That was cool.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and you can gauge your thyroid by your basal body temperature.
Right.
Know how it's doing and how it's working. So if it's really low, like 95s, then thyroid is not doing its job properly.
Mm-hmm.
I buy granulated kelp,
Mm-hmm.
and then I powder it after I get it home and put it in little capsules.
Nice.
So like double lot capsules. I think they hold like a quarter teaspoon.
Yeah, totally.
You don't have to taste it at all.
Yeah, right? That's a cheater's way.
Yeah. Oh, hey, whatever works. I mean, it's
I hear you.
my mom taught me the trick for fish oil capsules is freeze them and then take them when they're frozen so that they don't go out until they get into your intestines. So you don't have that fish oil burp.
Yeah, right? I like the children's lemon flavored ones. They're nice and tiny. Otherwise, it's just my system doesn't like all that oil.
Oh, my system loves the oil. I'm like, especially when I'm doing cleanses, I start to really crave it. Like I want the oils and fats big time.
No, I just mean like my bowels. It just gets in, too loose.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Totally. Yeah.
But the little kids ones are fine.
I know. I love the little kid flavors.
Oh, the balls are really tiny too. So
Yeah.
well, that works.
Yep. I like those. Yeah. I definitely one time and one time only made the mistake of buying the unflavored, and I was like, never again. It was terrible. But I made myself take it because it's not, the Green Pastures Arctic Ice is the highest grade that you can really get, and it is not cheap. So I was like, no, you're taking this whole bottle, like it or not. You are not, deal with it. And I was like, well, I will never make that mistake again. And I have not.
You're right. It's Green Pastures Arctic Ice Fish Oil.
Yeah, they make a lot of different kinds. I buy just their fermented cod liver oil, but they also make one with the royal butter, which is the vitamin D, K2, K1, vitamin A, like the really dense vitamins and minerals that you can't get from many sources.
Oh.
They make a blend, which I recommend. See, I actually don't have a problem with liver, which is what those are all in, is liver. So I do get liver, and I'll grind it, and I'll make it like, I'll use a little bit in like a a burger or a little bit in a marinara or something. So then when I buy my fish oil, I just get the fish oil.
Got it.
But for especially for clients who are like, I'm not doing the liver thing. I'm not going to do it. Then I'm like, get the royal butter combo, because that gives you everything. And you need to have your vitamin D and your vitamin A and your vitamin K all together, because they all work together.
Yes.
Yeah. So I do recommend that one together. They also make some other stuff that I have tried over the years. And I just keep coming back to getting the capsules because they're just the easiest.
Right.
They're the easiest. That's what it comes down to, is you need easy things in life.
It's been great. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Whew, awesome. Did either of you two have any other questions?
Well, you're good with hormones, so if somebody's, in menopause, past menopause, really past menopause, all done. But hormones are off. Are you pretty good with those because of the charting? You can pretty much tell what's happening, or?
Yeah, because then you're getting into things like something's going on with your adrenals, or you might be getting outside sources of estrogen that are screwing things up. There's still low levels of hormones happening in your body, so there can be different things that happen. Thyroid, just because I had my own thyroid struggles, so I did a lot of research on thyroid. I'm pretty good at spotting that these days too. Yeah, because they're all kind of the same systems. They just sort of shift and morph and change, and they're supposed to do different things. So it's like knowing what they're supposed to be doing in those different phases of life,
right,
is half the battle right there. Yeah.
Have you studied ketosis, getting the body into ketosis?
Yeah, when I was in school for health coaching, we definitely did a couple different modules on ketosis, the Atkins diet, and how that even got started, and all of those things. I think it's a really interesting. And I've seen some really good effects for people with it. I don't personally use it, nor do I personally put it into practice. I am resistant to supplements that aren't, I guess, traditionally based. If that makes sense. I'm very much somebody who would rather just do what we did ancestrally.
Right.
So I get a little like the biohacking kind of stuff kind of makes me go, but how? You need to tell me more about that, because I'm not drawn to it just because it's a new technology. So I've seen some ketosis programs that are like powders that you drink.
Yes.
And maybe they're great. I don't know. I haven't really looked at like their ingredient list, but generally when I see powders that you drink, I go, I'm going to need to see that ingredient list, because 9 times out of 10, there's things in there that I don't want.
Yeah, I've got a really trusted source. I'm going to go take a look at something on Friday.
Totally.
I'll share it with you.
Please do.
It's really taking down the inflammation. This guy was telling Terry and I, my husband and I, about it. His client is in her mid 70s or something, and she even had like frozen shoulder, and she just got on all this stuff, and her eyesight, she doesn't need her glasses. I mean, crazy town.
Nice
Stuff is happening for people, that aren't like out to sell you something. They're just like, holy shit, this has happened to me. I don't know why, but I like this. And it's really clearing the brain fog too.
Oh, nice. Nice.
So he was saying we either burn sugar or we burn fat. And, he doesn't recommend now you just do this forever, because he's getting his body ready for summer abs. So he's using it to to eat the fat off the land, so to speak, so he has his abs. And he is like,
Fair enough.
I don't know, 60, 65, he's up there.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that sounds, I mean, it's fascinating. First of all, I like to see things that work, though I like to know what the long-term effects are. And what's in it exactly.
Me too.
So those are like the first two hurdles. And then, is this something that you have to do constantly, or is this something that you're going to cycle through? And if it's going to give you like a body image roller coaster, that's a whole nother thing,
Right.
Because I definitely know women that'll be like, I'm going to do this thing and I'm going to do this thing forever. And it's like, you need to get off of that thing.
Yeah, right?
It's too much. You've gone too far.
It's like, my neck hurts. I'm going to do Botox. Like, what?
Yeah.
My
Yeah.
dance teacher did. She used Botox on her neck a lot. I was like, oh my God.
Yo, no, I know. I have girlfriends. I mean, I live in Los Angeles, so, but I have girlfriends that are like, I cannot feel my face and it looks perfect.
Oh, girl.
And I'm like, smile for me. And she's like, this is my angry face. This is my happy face. This is my scared face. And I'm like, so proud of you, girl. So proud of you. Like, what are you going to do? I'm like, okay, great. Call me when you're ready.
You're right.
But you know what? A lot of that actually sounds like kind of how I felt when I discovered bone broth, because my eyesight improved substantially.
Did it? Oh, that's good to know.
I started doing bone broth and fish oil at the same time, so I can't like claim one of them or the other did this, or maybe it's a combo of the two.
Right.
I had arthritis in both of my knees. And when I lived in New York, I couldn't get down the subway stairs or my brownstone stairs, because especially when it was raining or weather was happening. And it really sucked. And then I started doing the bone broth and the fish oil, and I actually can't tell you when it's going to rain anymore, which is weird.
Wow.
Though I did forget, actually, in 2016, I moved 5 times. And I forgot for a couple of months to do all of my stuff. And it did start to rain, and I actually felt it in my knees. And that was the first time I went, oh my God, I felt the rain in my knees. Oh, I haven't been doing my bone broth or my fish oil in like months. And I realized that's how much difference it was making for me.
Yeah, it's nice to have ammo.
Right? And then the optometrist and my eyes were actually like significantly better.
Oh yeah, my eye pressures went down so fast they studied me. I got on some super antioxidants and they freaked out. And if they get high and that's not working, I can go to this vision formula this guy totally avoided cataract surgery from.
Nice.
And it just like is almost instantaneous. Cool.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. I mean, and that's the thing, like I saw all of these amazing improvements in the body. And I mean, just not even getting into digestion and my hormones, like my body just responded really well to all of it. So
cool.
Yeah. So it sounds a little bit like my bone broth fish oil regimen.
Yeah. So when you say bone broth, like what are you getting? Are you getting something from grass-fed animals? What are you actually getting in there?
I do chicken primarily.
Oh, okay.
I will, when I'm home and I have my own stuff, I will basically I get a chicken from a kosher, well, it's actually halal butcher here in Los Angeles that I go to, where it's live chicken and they are grass-fed, free-range, just like live happy chicken lives. And I get a chicken from them. I throw it in the crock pot and let it cook in the crock pot, and then I just take the meat off the bone, and then I put the water and a little bit of vinegar in it and let it sit overnight. And in the morning, I just turn the crock pot on. Come back a couple of days later, and I have bone broth.
Oh, you do vinegar, huh?
Yeah, you do a little bit of vinegar in any of them. Like if you use beef or fish or whatever, it doesn't matter. You use a little bit of vinegar and you let it sit overnight at room temperature so that vinegar can start to break down the bone structure, which is how you leach all of the calcium and all of the cartilage and all of the minerals out of the bone. And then you cook it for a couple of days, depending on what type of bones they are. And I like to say, if I can get in there with a pair of scissors and I can cut through the bones and get all of that bone marrow exposed to the broth, then that's my last day of cooking. And I let it cook one more day and get all of that good stuff into the broth.
Wow.
And then
Okay.
throw it through a strainer and jar it. And then actually I puree the bones in the Vitamix for my dog. And she can eat her dog food every day.
Interesting. Wow.
Yeah, we use a whole animal, you know. It's like, if I'm going to do this, if I'm going to commit to eating animal product, it's going to be high-end animal product, and I'm going to use all of it.
Huh. Well,
I have a friend who used the feet. She would make a soup with the feet.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and they're so cheap, and that's where all the good cartilage is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, my butcher sells bags of just the feet and just the livers, and I'll go get bags of just those two and use them. I'll add a couple sets of feet to my bone broth.
Oh, God.
When you start doing it and you're like, you commit to being the best that you possibly can do for this, you start going, well, there's no reason for the animal to go to waste. So let's just use all of it. Let's, no waste.
So how much vinegar do you tend to use, like in a small pot?
I use just a little splash.
Like a tablespoon, teaspoon?
If I'm doing one chicken, I probably use no more than a tablespoon.
Okay.
Yeah, no more than a tablespoon. If it's small, if it's on the small side, I'll use a teaspoon. If it's on, like when we do Thanksgiving, I get my turkey from the same butcher, and I'll do a tablespoon in the turkey when I do that bone broth for the turkey, which, by the way, is my favorite bone broth, turkey.
When you cook it, do you cook it in a slow cooker?
When I have my equipment, yes, because it's just the easiest way to do it. I have a slow cooker that goes from 2 hours, 4 hours, 6 hours, or 8 hours. So I just set it on 8 hours for the first cycle, and then it just clicks over to warm, and I let it just chill out on warm. So, and let it just go for a couple of days.
Got it.
But living at my best friend's, she has an enormous glass Pyrex pot. So we just stick it on the back of the stove, and we put the flame on the absolute lowest it can go, and we just let it go and throw in some filtered water from time to time as needed.
Cool. So when you're just like, you take your chicken in, you cook it all day, in the slow cooker on high, that's not going to be bone broth. No,
that's just roasting. Like, you can roast the chicken in the oven, like very traditionally. I like doing it in the crock pot because it's so freaking juicy and tender. It makes like the best shredded chicken everything. Shredded chicken enchiladas, tacos, stir fry. I mean, I just make everything out of it. It's amazing. It's so good.
You put a raw one in there? Because these are cooked. These are like, what do they call them? Rotisserie chickens from the health food store, and then put it in the crock pot.
Okay,
when it's down to the bone.
Yeah, if it's already cooked, then you just take the bones and throw them into the crock pot.
And I just cook it on high all day, and that's going to be bone broth then?
You don't want to cook it on high. You want to cook it on low. You want to let it come to that boil. So whatever that setting is for you, like you might want to put it on high until it comes to a boil, but then you want to turn it on low or even warm.
Okay.
And then just leave it on that. You want it to be like at barely a simmer, if that, and just leave it at that low simmer for a long time, because you can't speed this process up. It takes time, and it just needs to be nice and low. And that's what I like about the crock pot, because you can just leave it on warm, and you don't have to think about it again for like 3 days.
All right. So the check-in to be sure you're actually making real bone broth is that the bones, you can actually like snip through them and bleach them. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Good to know.
Yeah, that's just how I time it. You know, lots of recipes will say, you know, cook on low for 2 days for chicken, or 24 hours for chicken or something. And I go, but I want all of that. Like, I'm here. What's one more day? I want all of that really deep nutrients into this broth. So my personal timing is when I can go in there with scissors and I can cut through all of even the big bones, then I cook it for one more day. And that's my timing. So it doesn't matter if it's in the crock pot or on the stove or whatever, or at whatever temperature, until I can do that. As far as I'm concerned, my batch isn't done.
Got it.
Yeah.
Movies.
Yeah. Totally. No, great questions.
All right.
Cool. Great. Yay.
We did it. Thanks again.
Thanks, ladies. Yeah, totally. That was great. Thank you for coming and for hanging out with me.
Absolutely.
Yay.
Yeah.
Next month.
For having this.
Yeah, we'll do it again next month. I'll send out an email for May, and we'll plan the date, because I will also be on the road in May. So I'm not 1,000% sure when we're going to do it, but I will send out an email. So you'll.
It's not always the first Wednesday of the month then.
No, my initial idea was that it would be the first Thursday of the month, which was what it was last month. And then I realized I'm traveling all day tomorrow. So I was like, I set the first Thursday of the month, and I literally have to change it the next week or the next month.
That works for me, because my meetup is once a month. My wild woman's place.
Ooh, I like it. Yeah, so now I'm thinking I might just shift it so that it's a little bit more in tune with the moon cycle. So we'll see. We'll see. Also, I'm going to be on the road at the beginning of May next month. So I'm just going to email out and let you guys know. But you know, I'll send it through the email list, and I'll post it in the Facebook group, and I'll change the event too. So the event that I used for this one, I'm just going to change the date for the next one. So you'll get a notification that the date was changed. So I feel like that's an easy way for, you know, like you're on the email list, you're in the Facebook group, and if you say that you're going to the event, you'll get the notification that the event date was changed. So you should be able to, should not miss anybody, I hope.
All right. All right. Well, thank you. I'm going to scoot.
Cool. Thank you, ladies. I will see you soon.
Okay.
All right. Bye.